Hey, everybody, this is Mother Teresa. How's everybody doing today? Listen, I have noticed that there has been a lot of videos that have talked about either living in the projects, living in Section 8 housing, living in low income housing, and all of those types of videos are getting some major reviews. Not only major reviews, but views. And let me just ask you all, what is the fascination about the videos? Well, I thought about it and I also shared with my daughter about the videos. And let me just tell you what I think is the fascination is that, as I have stated before, everybody has a story, and we are all interconnected in some way or form or fashion. And so, and when we talk about our stories, which is one of the things that YouTube really pushes, is that share your story, because we want to see how your story resonates with other people. And let me just tell you, a lot of us have stories that are similar. As I stated before, we are more alike than we are different. And so I just wanted to share with you all a little bit about my story growing up in Oak Hill Plaza. Now, let me just tell you, I don't live in Oak Hill Plaza right now. I haven't lived in the projects in over 40 years. But let me just tell you about my experience as a young girl growing up in Oak Hill Plaza and some of the lessons that I learned, and also some of the things that I think that contributed to me and my who I am today. Now listen, growing up in the projects, one of the things when we moved to Oak Hill Plaza in 1969, and I had to write some notes because, y'all, that's been a long time ago. When we moved into Oak Hill Plaza, which is located in Nacogdoches, and they called it the Hill. It was on the Hill. And back then, when the projects were originally first built, they didn't necessarily call them the projects. They called them Oak Hill Plaza. It was brand new. It was low income housing. Yes, it was the projects. And it was built for, I would say, for those that were in our situation, where either you had single parents, whether it was a mom or a dad with their children, or you had full both parents, uh, two family households that were living there, as well as single younger adults and older adults that were living in Oak Hill Plaza. Now, my mom was a single mom with 6 children. My mom and my dad were never married, but she was divorcing from her first husband. And so when she moved us to Oak Hill Plaza, basically my mom moved us from a house that was um, substandard into the projects, which was really a step up for us. The projects were brick buildings, had 4 bedrooms, really nice accommodations at the time. It was a place that for a long time, I didn't understand why people thought that it was such a horrible place to live. When you walk in, and I've seen some of the videos, and they take you step by step through the apartments. Well, I can't do that because I'm not there. But let me just explain to you what it looked like. When you first walk in through the door, of course, there was a little bit of a hallway, and you immediately was in the living room. Now, in our apartment where we lived, again, there were 4 bedrooms. So when you walked through the door, went down a little short hallway, you were immediately into the living room. And in the living room, it was a living room and a dining room that was combined. And then from the dining room, you could look right into the kitchen. And it was what you call, I guess, a little galley kitchen, where it was a refrigerator, a little bit of a cabinet, countertop, the stove, another little countertop. And then when you turn to the other side, there was a little bit of a countertop, the sink, and some more countertop. And so, but it was not a large kitchen. It was really big enough for one person, maybe two people to be in there at a time. And there was no, of course, no dishwasher, but it was just a little small, quaint kitchen. It had plenty of cabinet space at the top, at the bottom. And of course, you know, back in the day, where did we keep all of our cereal and stuff like that? Of course, we kept them on the top of the refrigerator. But everything else had a place. Now, in that little kitchen was not enough space to put a like a deep freezer, which my mom had a little freezer. We call them a deep freezer back in the day. And with 6 children, it wasn't that little small one. It was that huge old-fashioned deep freezer where, you know, it commanded its own space. And so that was in our dining room area, along with our dining table. And we even had a piano. And so we had a piano that was in our kitchen area. And the way that we separated the kitchen area and the living room area is that there was a couch that sat going across that space. So in our living room, we had our couch, and actually we had 2 couches that I can recall. And then there was a chair, like an armchair. But when you walked into coming in from the front door, there was a little hall closet, like we put our coats and things in there. And then in the living room, you had another little closet. And I think we kept like blankets and different things like that in there. Maybe some extra stuff, maybe other linens and different things like that. Now here's where the tricky part comes in. In those apartments in Oak Hill Plaza, there was not any type of central air conditioning. What we did have was that old-fashioned, what they called it was a attic fan. And the attic fan was in the hallway, that when you left from the living room, you would go through this door, and it was a door, and that's where all of the 4 bedrooms were located. So when you opened the door and you went through that other part of the house, my mom's bedroom was first, and then there was a second bedroom, and then going on down the hallway, there were 2 additional bedrooms at the end of the hallway. There was one bathroom, and everybody shared that one bathroom. And my mom had 5 girls and 3 boys. One set of my brothers were twins, and everybody used that one bathroom. Now, the other thing that we had in that apartment is, like I said, we had the attic fan. So whenever we were, you know, wanting to cool off, you would turn on that attic fan. But let me tell you, that thing was so very loud. It was like, I don't know how we were able to sleep at night with that thing on, but it miraculously, it cooled the house. It really did, especially in the bedroom areas. So whenever we would go to bed, we would always close that door, because we knew that we were going to turn on that attic fan, and it was going to be able to keep everybody cool. Well, again, like I said, my mom's bedroom was the first bedroom. And with it only being 4 bedrooms and 6 kids, that meant that we had to share our bedrooms. So in the first bedroom, and it kind of switched out a little bit, but in that first bedroom, it was a bedroom where my mom had 2 sets of bunk beds, because it was 3 girls that was sharing that bed. No, one, two. I think maybe 2 of us at the time was sharing a bedroom. And then my oldest sister, Grace, she always, I think, had her own bedroom. And then all of my three brothers, they shared a bedroom. So you had two, my sister that's, next to me, we shared a bedroom. And then my oldest sister, Grace, she had her own bedroom. And then my brothers had their bedroom. And at the end of that hallway, you all, I'm trying to think, in those bedrooms, they all did have a closet. So they were not the big walk-in closets. It was just a standard closet. And so I can remember that, of course, we didn't have a lot of clothes. We didn't have a lot of shoes or whatever. Now, my sister Grace, she did. She was always a really fancy dresser, and I can remember her. She would order her things from Spiegel catalog and everything like that. Always had very expensive taste, and so but we would, in that hallway, at the end of that hallway was a big bucket, and it was like a big barrel. I don't know where my mom got that thing from, but when it was time to clean up, basically clothes, shoes, toys, everything. We didn't have a regular, like a toy box or a catch-all. Everything went into that barrel. And it was at the end of the hallway, and it was made out of that big, it was big and tall, but it was made out of like that heavy, heavy duty cardboard. I don't even, like I said, I don't know where it came from. But anyway, that was our catch-all, whatever. And then, of course, in our bathroom, it was just a standard bathroom. I don't think there were any cabinets other than on the back side of the wall where we would actually put like our towels and everything. And then up under there, we would put, that's where we would put our laundry basket, and that's where our dirty clothes would go in there. And then, of course, like I said, we would put the towels on the top shelves and everything. We would also keep like our toiletries and different things like that, our feminine products and, just all that kind of stuff. We would keep that in there, cleaning supplies, but there was not a cabinet per se that we could put all of those things in. Um, the apartment itself, we lived in apartment building number 400. We lived in apartment 405, and the apartments itself, they were in quads. So it was four families that lived in this section, this quad here. And then on the other side, it was two quads in each building. And then on the other side, it was another four families. And so, and in the quad that we lived in, we lived at the end, there was a 4-bedroom on top, which we lived upstairs. And then there was a 4-bedroom on the bottom. And then right next to us, right down the hall, the outside stairway, was a 1-bedroom upstairs for a person, and then a 1-bedroom downstairs. Now, the neighbors that we had back in the day, on the upstairs, we had a single, a single lady that was more like a mom to us. Her name was Nancy, and Nancy was, she was single. She always had the nicest apartment. Our apartment was nice too, but it was nothing like Nancy's. Nancy's apartment, like I said, she was single. She always worked. And so she always had a beautiful, beautiful apartment. And we would go over, her and my mom were best friends. And so we would go over in the evening time and, keep her company. We would watch television with her. She would do our hair. She was the person who would keep up our hair for my mom. And she was also the one that would cook for us sometimes. Because my mom, she would always say, Evelyn, I have something for you and these kids. And she would bring us a big pot of what we call goulash or whatever. and a cornbread. And then sometimes she would make us a cake. And she made those cakes that had like the white or the beige, like a caramel um frosting or a glaze or whatever. But she was always taking care of us. She was always doing something nice for us. And again, like I said, that was my mom's friend. And matter of fact, they were friends for years until Miss Nancy died, which has been several years ago. But that was our neighbor there. And then downstairs we had an elderly neighbor who she didn't have any children, and so her name was Miss Mabel. And we would go down and we would always visit and keep Miss Mabel company. And sometimes we would go in and we would, help her to do things around her house. Not only was she was elderly, but she was on a walker. And I think eventually she was probably in a wheelchair. So she was very limited to the things that she could do. And one of the things about Miss Mabel is that she, even though it was a one-bedroom apartment, she never slept like in her bedroom. She had a bed that was in her living room. And then she had this big, huge rocking chair that she would sit in most of the time. And then, of course, she had couches and stuff where we could come in and sit with her. But we would just love to go and visit with Miss Mabel, and we would keep her company and everything. And also Miss Nancy. And then our neighbors that lived down up under us was the Clemens, who they had, I think, one, two, three, four, maybe five, four children, four children, five children. It was five of them. So, and they were like our best friends, growing up and everything. So, and they lived there for years. Let me tell you, they lived there. We all did. We lived there for a really, really long time. I think the first person to move out from from our little quad was probably the Clemens. And I think they purchased them a house, which was always the goal when you lived in the projects. Is the way that you got out is that you purchased a house. And I can just remember so many lessons that I learned when I lived in the projects. My mom was very protective of us, and a lot of times, she had to work. Again, I said she was a single mom. And so a lot of times when she would go to work, she would give us our instructions. And of course, my oldest sister was the person that was left in charge. And let me just tell you, she ruled with an iron fist. She had to, and she was not very much older than we were. She's only like, what, 4 or 5 years older than I am. But her presence commanded respect. And I think she had her bluff in on everybody. We did exactly whatever she told us to do. But she was the person that was in charge, and she made sure that we stayed close by home. And some of my brothers, sometimes they were a little bit rebellious, especially I'm just going to leave it like that. But anyway, we didn't venture too far away from home. We were not the ones that were going to be running up and down the streets. We played with those people that were right there in our immediate vicinity. We were not allowed to roam the neighborhood. And that's one of the things that I know that probably kept us from getting into some things that we could have possibly gotten into. My mom often said that, or reminded us, just, we're only going to be here for a short amount of time. This is just a stepping stone for us to get to where we need to be. And so when she meant that, and we took that literally, that, just because you live in the projects, you don't have to have a project mentality. You don't have to, think that you are less than or lower than. This is just a stepping stone for us to get to where we need to be. And one of the other things that I think about Oak Hill Plaza back in the day, that was really about, that neighborhood was more about community. And, you know, you think about now the projects and sometimes where people live, and it's a dangerous place. People are so disconnected from one another, but that's not the way that it was back then. It was a true community. It's like we developed friendships that have lasted a lifetime. You know, some of the people that I met in Oak Hill Plaza is, you know, I still consider them as my friends. My brother and my sisters, they have lifelong friends that they met in while we lived in Oak Hill Plaza. So it was more about community. It was more about these are people who hardworking individuals who are just trying to make a living, just trying to make a living and trying to do the very best that they could. One of the other things that I think about is that in those apartments, they were very small apartments. Even though there were 4 bedrooms, they were very small bedrooms. Again, there was no central air. Eventually, my mom did buy a air conditioner for the living room, and I think there may have been one that she may have had in her bedroom, but they were so whatever picky about, you know, you couldn't have this and you couldn't have that. But one of the things that I do recall is that there definitely were not spaces for like a washer and dryer hookup. That was unheard of. But guess what? We did have a washateria. We called it the washateria. That was on site. And so we would pile up our clothes and we would walk across which we were fortunate enough where we lived just right across from the office where the washateria was located. And we would just take our clothes over there. And it was usually on a Saturday. We would have to get up and we would get those clothes done. And it was a very limited amount. Now, it was, I don't know, hundreds of families that lived there. And it was probably only maybe 10 washers, maybe 4 dryers in the whole entire the little washateria area. I don't know how in the world they thought that everybody was going to be able to do their laundry there. You know, you had to very strategically, you know, get over there and get those clothes done on a timely basis. But there were just so many different things that I can remember, you know, growing up in the projects and as an adult now, I think about it and I think about the friendships and I think about, you know, the things that happened. Not everything was bad, but not everything was good. Sometimes when people think about, like I said, it was more of a community back then. So there was a lot of just, you know, unity and fellowship. But then you did have some things that sometimes that kind of went awry, and you know, you were going to have the police, you were going to have the ambulance, and you were going to have, you know, the fights and different things like that was going on. But for the most part, growing up in Oak Hill Plaza, I don't remember a whole lot of those things. And maybe it's because I'm always going to be, or I've always been the person who looks at life through rose-colored glasses. And I have always been the one to see the positive and the good in humanity and in people. And so if there were a lot of things that were happening like that, first of all, we were not allowed to go out into the neighborhood as much as probably other people. So we probably missed a lot of things. I can recall when I was telling somebody as an adult that I grew up in Oak Hill Plaza, and they argued with me and told me, no, you didn't. And I was like, yes, I did. I lived in Oak Hill Plaza until I got married. And they was like, there is no way. How do I not know you? How do I not know, you know, your sisters? But when I mentioned my brothers, especially 2 of my brothers, my twins brothers, they was like, oh, those are your brothers? And I was like, yes. But anyway, just growing up in Oak Hill Plaza, you know, the things that I can tell you, about living in the projects. I don't necessarily wear it as a badge of shame. I actually wear it as a badge of honor, because there were so many different things and lessons that life taught me while I lived in the projects. And one of the greatest things that happened uh, living in the projects is that that's where I met my husband. My husband, remember I said that there was a quad over here and a quad on the other side? My husband lived in the opposite, on the other half of the building where we lived. And so we lived and grew up together. Now, we didn't do a lot of interacting with each other. I was friends with his sister long before I even began to start dating my husband. But we grew up as neighbors. We grew up in the same neighborhood. And so, and that's where I met my husband. We started dating when we were 14, and we got married when we were 20. And when we got married, that's when we left the projects. And so, and that's another video where I talk to you all about moving out of the projects. But, you know, the thing about it is, no matter, and I love to say this, no matter what a person has been, they can definitely choose to be different. No matter where a person was raised or has lived, they do not have to become what their environment dictates to them. And again, like I said, not that it was bad, not everything was bad. There were some great things that I learned as as a young person growing up in the projects. And again, like I said, I was had to been 6 years old when I moved to the projects, and I was 20 when I left. So that was time, a long time. I was a teen mom. My husband and I were teen parents. My daughter was raised in the projects. She lived there with us for 3 years before we got married. And so, great things. All I can say is that, you know, I can see why some people are sharing their journeys of living in the projects, but I can just tell you this. Um, some of the stories and some of the apartments that I've seen, they take me back to 405 Oak Hill Plaza, because some of them resemble the apartment that I grew up in. And I look at that, and I was looking at, oh, I can't think of her name. Is it, oh, let me see if I can keep her name. I've been trying to write different notes, because when I get information, I try to share it and give it back to you. Is it Capriciana? Capriciana. I watched her last night. And let me just tell you, young lady, if you ever watch this, you touched my heart. You really did. Because they reminded me of being a teen mom growing up in the projects, okay? And so I just want to salute you for your stand that you have taken and what you're doing to raise your son. It doesn't always have to end where you're stuck in the projects. And if you are, that's fine. If that's what you want to do, because let me just tell you, again, like I said, I haven't lived in the projects in over 40 years, but I can tell you that some of the people that were living in the projects when I was a young girl, some of their family, if not them, are still there. Some of them who were children that are now adults, they have an apartment in Oak Hill Plaza. Some of their children have an apartment in Oak Hill Plaza, but that's their business, okay? That wasn't the story that God had for me and my family, but that's their business. And I'm going to share with you all, and I'm going to show you all that by the grace of God, God can take you from the projects from the projects to homes that we could only dream about living, okay? Living in. And that's exactly what God has done for me. And I'm going to share with you all probably on my next video of me moving out of the projects and how my life turned out. I'm thankful. That's all I can say is I am thankful, and I'm thankful. I'm thankful for where I started, and I am thankful for my journey, and I am thankful for the opportunity, for the experience of having lived in the projects. It's, again, I don't wear it as a badge of shame. I wear it as a badge of honor. And also, I'm thankful for the experience. Because let me just tell you, and I say this and I've said this before, is that when we lived in Oak Hill Plaza, everybody looked like me. Everybody, all the families looked like I did. I couldn't tell if families were struggling or if they had a little bit more. We were all in the same boat, okay? Some had cars, some did not. And we all made it. And so I don't know if there was any judgment that was being passed on other people. Yeah, you had some people who walked around with their, I would say, their nose stuck up in the air and whatever. It was like people wouldn't speak to you or whatever, but that was few and far between. For the most part, we were a community. We were a family. And that's what I'm taking away from living in the projects. Okay? Like I said, everybody has their reason for making their videos. I just wanted to share mine and share a little bit about my testimony of living in the projects. And so stay tuned because I have another video that will be coming out about us moving away from the projects. Y'all have a good night. Bye-bye, everybody.